Welcome to another beautiful edition of the program Scale of Justice, a program where we highlight our justice system in Nigeria as we bring conversations geared towards moving our system forward. Although the Nigerian Constitution actually guarantees freedom of rights such as the right to life, dignity, we have personal liberty, fair hearing, freedom of expression, we have peaceful assembly, freedom from discrimination. Many citizens in our country continue to struggle to see how these rights can be enforced, especially when these rights are violated in our country. How can Nigerians seek justice when their rights are infringed? What are the legal remedies available, and what roles do the courts, the law, and enforcement agency play in all of this ecosystem? We have joining us to help make sense of this discussion a human rights lawyer who's been involved in the Nigerian justice system for quite a while, and he's done a lot of work with the system. He's joined us in our Abuja studio talking about Barrister Abdul Karim Musa. He's a human rights lawyer. He is also a founder of the AK Musa Chamber. He's joined us live in Abuja studios. Thank you so much, Barrister, for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Right, so we'll talk about the Nigerian justice system, but just before then, I'd like to do a comment. Just the other day, a few days ago, the Nigerian Bar Association conducted its election, and I've heard back and forth from lawyers, very respected lawyers. Some have said there were glitches. Did you vote in that election, and what was your experience?
Well, it's quite unfortunate that we had that experience. I voted in the election, but it was not after a lot of struggles, and even the voting was characterized with a lot of anomalies, abnormalities, and irregularities. And it speaks volumes to the participation of lawyers in the democratic system of Nigeria. It was quite a misfortune. It's the worst election that the NBA has conducted, and we pray that this does not happen again. I mean, it was terrible.
All right, so let's get into our discussion for tonight as well. We'll look at human rights. What does human rights mean for Nigerians who are home now and they're watching? They've heard this, human rights. What does it really mean?
Well, human rights are those rights. When you look at human rights, it is the right that every human has. But then there are classes of human rights. There's the fundamental human rights. And those fundamental human rights are those inalienable rights that are bestowed on man by God, but guaranteed by the Constitution of a state for the protection of every citizen in a state and for the peaceful coexistence of citizens in every state.
Right, so what are some of them? You said they are bestowed on man by God and guaranteed by the Constitution.
Yes, they are described. I'll give you a list of them. Right. They are described as inalienable rights. It's believed to have been accorded man by God. It was bestowed on man by God. For instance, the right to life. It is as a result of that right you have to live that you can breathe and go about your business. The right to move. The right to freedom of expression, to talk. The right to have a family. The right to associate with people. That's those rights: freedom of association, freedom of expression, right to life, right to dignity of human persons. Those are just examples of the array of rights that we have. And when you come down to Nigeria, those rights are recognized by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as per Chapter 4. The right to life, right to dignity of human person, right to freedom of expression, right to religion, right to association, and all those rights, right to hold opinions. Those are the rights entrenched in the Constitution. They are guaranteed by the Constitution, but they were not bestowed on you by the Constitution. They are bestowed on you by God. That's why they are called inalienable. Inalienable in the sense that you cannot alienate those rights to another person. And nobody can take that right away from you. And even you cannot give that right to another person. So they are fundamental rights, they are inalienable rights.
All right, so Nigeria is a democratic society.
Yes.
And as that, one of the things, Ban, we've heard about democracy is that democracy is actually a system of government where human rights are well respected. Is that true?
Yes, certainly. For you to say you have a constitutional democracy, the rights of every citizen within that democracy must be respected and must be protected. They are fundamental to the determination as to whether a state is practicing democracy or not.
Right. So, in our case, because we've heard many times people say, yeah, we're practicing democracy, but rights are not being respected. Are rights being respected in Nigeria?
Well, it is quite a misfortune that rights are not very respected in Nigeria. Though we may say that we're a work in progress, but like I continuously say, our development in terms of issues of human rights is very slow. Though those rights are entrenched in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, but the abuses that we see, ranging from the executive arm of government to the law enforcement agents and even citizens, are not commendable at all. And so in Nigeria, we cannot really say that rights are being respected. You cannot say that you have a constitutional democracy, because the greatest threat to a constitutional democracy is not the military dictatorship, but it is a civilian authoritarianism that is posing itself to be a democracy. So when you believe that you have a democracy or you have a civilian government, but that civilian government does not place premium on the rights of its citizens, then it is worse than a military dictatorship.
All right. So for those whose rights have been violated, and let's even assume you've talked about this right, how can rights be violated? How do you know your rights have been violated? And in the process where your rights is being violated, what are the options available?
Well, the first way to know that a person's right is being violated is if the person is prevented from enjoying some of the rights afforded him by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. If somebody attempts, you can institute an action for fundamental rights if you perceive that a person is or is about to do anything,
is or is about
to do anything that would interfere with your enjoyment of your rights. If somebody is stopping you from expressing yourself on a matter, then that person is infringing on your right. But I must quickly say that there are actually limits to the enjoyment of those rights. They are not absolute and endless, because like we say, where your right begins or where your right ends, another person's right begins. So your freedom of expression does not include expressions that is capable of
tarnishing people's image.
No, not necessarily tarnishing people's image, making statements that would destroy another person's business. And so, while with the issue of image, we're a bit skeptical about it, because
we see a lot of character assassination issues.
Yeah, when we talk of character assassination, we have a problem in Nigeria where those defamations are criminalized, and so there's a danger in criminalizing defamation. It should be a civil suit. A person should be able to exercise their right to dignity of human person, because if I defame you, I have undermined the dignity of a person. So, but then the law should be that I should be able to deal with that issue by a civil route. But Nigeria has criminalized it, so you can go to prison for insulting someone, and that's not
You
good.
don't think it should be so?
No, it shouldn't be so. The reason is this: because it would have impact on the ability to freely express opinion, and the people that will be mostly affected are even journalists and pressmen, because one of the hallmark of journalism is the ability to report things or even tinker people's mind to the possibility of the existence of certain things. And so if you are an investigative journalist and you begin to raise issues that maybe does not sit well with certain persons, with the laws that we have, you can easily be intimidated and oppressed, because defamation is criminal. It's a crime in Nigeria. But not to get distracted. The question is, how do you know your rights, and how do you enforce it? So your fundamental right is entrenched in chapter 4 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria: right to life, right to dignity of human person, right to freedom of expression, right to association, and all those rights, they are entrenched in chapter 4 of the Constitution. And anybody that does anything to undermine any of those rights that are protected by that provision, you would have a cause of action. And how to enforce your right is by filing a fundamental right enforcement process, which can be commenced by an originating motion before a federal high court or a high court of a state. And so you can, by that process, demand that the court stops a person from carrying out a certain act that has impact on your ability to enjoy your right, or that because somebody has infringed upon your right, something should be done to compensate you for that abuse that the person has done to you.
Right. So let's talk about the fact that many Nigerians, sometimes talk about legal fees, because you said you right to seek an originating someone.
Yeah.
As an individual, if you're not a lawyer, you cannot do it yourself. You need services of a lawyer. And to get this, how easy and accessible is it to get services of lawyers, to human rights lawyers in our country?
Well, it is not difficult to have access to a lawyer, but what might be difficult is the ability to pay for the services of a lawyer.
Right.
Justice is not very cheap in Nigeria.
Oh, it's not cheap.
It's not cheap. So access to justice in Nigeria is one of the problems that we have, because access to justice can be a financial issue. It can be an institutional issue. So a lot of people, when you look at the system that we have currently, the system does not encourage people to even have access to justice. And I'll explain some of the problems we have. We have delays in dispensation of matters in our courts. So a person infringes upon your right, or you enter into a contract and you're cheated, and then you go to court. Because of the bureaucracy that we have, you are likely to spend years in court. And so when you consider the years you spend in court, when you consider the resources you are going to expend in paying a lawyer, when you consider the resources you are going to expend in filing processes in court, because you pay for processes that you file, then you may be discouraged from enforcing your right. So access to justice in Nigeria is not very easy. But we have Legal Aid Council, which is meant for people who are not very financially buoyant, but it is not, the services of that council cannot be sufficient. So there's still need for improvement of the judiciary by way of expanding the judiciary and bringing the justice system closer to the Nigerian people.
Right. So what are some of the institutions in our country, Nigeria, that is responsible for, addressing issues or violations of human rights and also protecting human rights? What are some of those institutions that have been given, by law? This is the mandates they have.
Yes, you see, the institutions, the law enforcement agencies that we have are set up for the protection of the rights of the Nigerian citizens. And it ranges from the police to the ICPC to the EFCC. They all have duties that is tailored towards ensuring that the rights of the Nigerian people are preserved and protected. For instance, the easiest place to reach is a police station. If a person infringes upon your rights, if a person has carried out an act that seems to occasion threat to your life, the police is there for the protection of your right to life. Right? So if somebody has done something that infringed on your economic rights, the EFCC is there. If somebody has taken certain actions that infringe on the right of the Nigerian people to have access to their resources, or somebody now embezzles resources because he's privileged to occupy an office, the ICPC is there. And so there are all the law enforcement agencies, from the NSCDC to all the law enforcement agencies, even to the immigration. They all have responsibilities that are tailored towards ensuring that your freedom or your rights are protected as they are within the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Okay, so how effective, as we have even the National Human Rights Commission, and the rest of them, how effective have these been? You've mentioned what they are supposed to do, right? The law enforcement agency, but how effective has it been towards protecting the rights of Nigerians so far?
Well, we must say that there's room for development. What we have seen over the years is not satisfactory.
Right.
We cannot say that we are doing well especially when we compare ourselves with what's obtainable in advanced societies, and especially when you also consider the fact that most times the limitation is not necessarily in anything that we do not have, but it is in a character that we have that is limiting the
character of the people manning
these institutions, the corruption within the system, the bureaucracy within the system, the lack of the willingness to do justice that exists within these institutions that has occasioned their failure to meet up with international standards. And so it is more of an issue of the corruption within the system, and it comes mostly from the executive arm of government. We have a system where might almost rules. When you see that the government of the day or the people in power have more access, quicker access to justice, utilizing the state institutions, the state machineries for the protection of their own rights or their own interests as against the protection of the Nigerian people. So if somebody infringes upon your right, the possibility that you are going to get justice is not as sure as if a politician occupying government office is interested in
it's faster for people
them.
In power.
So right. this institution is more efficient when dealing with mighty men. And so in Nigeria we have strong individuals and weak institutions, and no nation can grow where individuals are stronger than institutions.
Right. So let's come back home and talk about yourself. You are a human rights lawyer, and I guess on the top of my head, it means you take up lots of pro bono services. Is that what it means?
Yeah.
Right. So why you choose to be a human rights lawyer?
Well, the thing is that I believe that when every lawyer, most of the lawyers I know, most of the people who chose to read law and who were excited about studying law did so because the impression you have while embarking on the journey to study law is to be a beacon of justice, is to be a person that people can rely on to do justice on their behalf. But as we begin to grow in the profession, you realize that it's not easy to become that beacon of justice that you always wanted to be.
It's not easy. Why?
It's not easy because when you consider the needs that you have as a lawyer, you would rather become a lawyer to the rich than a lawyer to the poor. And so because you need to make ends meet, so it becomes a thing of sacrifice. And so along the path of your growth, many people get distracted from their first love, which is the willingness to do justice and to develop the institutions that we have. And so they begin to pursue money. And so while if some of us are still sticklers to those things, those ideals that made us study the profession in the first place, and made us venture into the profession in the first place. And so it's about fulfillment for everybody. I'm more fulfilled if I'm able to advocate for the rights of someone who would ordinarily not be able to advocate for themselves. And so so I think it's about fulfillment and passion. That's why I've chosen to be a human rights lawyer. But then not necessarily mean the Nigerian legal system is not so broad that you could say, oh, I'm a human rights lawyer, so I don't do other cases. I'm a litigation lawyer. I do all forms of cases. I go to court every day. In fact, most of the cases I have are involving properties. I've done a lot of election petitions, and so but then human rights is just a thing of flair. It's a thing of passion, but that's not necessarily what we do. Our legal system is not broad enough for you to choose one area and say, no, I'm not doing any other thing again. You will be less busy.
You'll be less busy, all right. And you have a lot of time on your hand to, to do other things. But let's talk about, the experiences you've had so far as a human rights lawyer. Has it been, have you had confrontation with the police? I know some lawyers, people get arrested, you go to the police station to get access to bail and all of that. How's it been so far, your experience?
Well, I'm a young lawyer, so there's not too much experience to say that we have. I feel like there's still a lot to do. It's not been very all that interesting. When lawyers grow, as lawyers keep growing, they stop taking on certain kind of cases because it's not cool to do certain kind of, like going to police station. It's not. I don't like to go to police stations, but by virtue of the fact that I want to defend the rights of people, I'll go to police station. When you go to police station, a lot of times you meet very corrupt officers. Sometimes you meet officers who are just wanting to be difficult. And sometimes you meet officers who don't even like to deal with lawyers. And so when they see a lawyer, they're like, okay, you have come with trouble and all that. And so it involves a lot. So it's not necessarily interesting. And sometimes you even get into certain altercations with law enforcement agents that can lead to injury, detention, and all that. So it is a thing of sacrifice, but the driving force is that when we look at the country that we have, and we know that nobody is coming to help you build this country, and then you look at what's obtainable in other countries, and then you know that if you don't fight for a system that you feel like you deserve, nobody's going to fight for it. And so there must be people at the frontiers who would say this is wrong and should not be. There was a time in South Africa when apartheid was lawful, and so there were a place that black people were restricted from going. But then people stood and said, no, this was not right. While majority of the others just accepted it for what it is. Some people stood against that system until it became outlawed. Right.
So I'd like to ask now. We've seen a lot of persons complain of unlawful detention, torture, and all of that. How do we, get to access or rebuke these kind of systems? That's one. And on the other hand, I'd like to ask: are Nigerians really aware of their rights? Are they really aware? Apart from a few, is there a problem of information as to the rights of the people?
Nigerians may not be very much aware of their rights, but I don't think that there's anything too special to know. Because if somebody is violating you, you would know that somebody is violating you. If you are being arrested and you are not given the opportunity to even defend yourself, you are thrown into cell, nobody needs to teach you law to know that this thing that just happened is not proper, right? So it's not a question of not knowing your right. It's a question of not having the means to enforce your rights, not having the access to the appropriate authorities through which you may enforce your rights. So
how do we deal with the institutional bankruptcy that we seem to see as towards rights enforcement?
So what we can do is already what we're doing is to continuously raise our voice against the injustices that we see in our country, not to be quiet and not to ever act as if we can tolerate it. And so Nigerians must get to that point where we are angry enough to call out wrong for what it is, and not just to be hoping to become an oppressor one day, because it seems like majority of Nigerians hate injustice insofar as
it doesn't affect them.
If it is affecting them, they hate it. But if it is benefiting them, they begin to like it. So it is in Nigeria you see that when corruption favors you, it becomes connection. But when it does not favor you, it becomes corruption. And so we cannot have that attitude and have the right justice system that we feel like we deserve.
Thank you so much, Barrister Abdulkarim Musa. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us, and we wish you all of the best in your practice, and as you keep, fighting and interrogating the questions that will make the Nigerian society a better society for all of us.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. That's the size of our program for tonight as we look at human rights and understanding rights enforcement. As a Nigerian, you have your rights. These are rights that were bestowed upon you before creation. The moment you come into the world as a human being, so freedom of association, freedom of movement, you have this right. And if at any time somebody tries to infringe of your right, you also have the right to seek justice. And the Legal Aid Council is always open. The law enforcement agencies are there to listen to your complaints and to take action from them. My name is Ubong Osoro, saying know your rights and make sure nobody tramples on your rights. Bye for now.